This year, I wanted to take a little bit of time to reflect on what I've read so that I can share it with all of you and remember it in the future. So I don't exclusively or even predominantly read new fiction. So these categories are a little different than maybe what you'll see on other people's lists who have read 20 or 30 novels or books that came out in 2023. This is just what I've read in the year. So first off, I have my favorite piece of fiction that I read this year. Now, this was a book that originally came out in 2012, but wasn't translated into English until 2021, and I finally read it this year. The book is The Easy Life and Kamusari by Shion Miura. Now, I've read some of her books in the past, particularly The Great Passage is one of my all-time favorite books, so I was really excited to read this, and it's also translated by Juliet Winters Carpenter again, who I think is an amazing translator. So I was super excited to get into this book, and it did not disappoint. This is really kind of a comfy read. I mean, it is called The Easy Life. The book follows a teenager, Yuki, who just after graduating is sort of tricked by his mom into joining this forestry co-op in this village in remote northern Japan called the Kamusari. What I love about this book is it's just so relaxing to read. The depictions of nature are beautiful, but also really insightful. And we live in a very technology-driven world. I'm sure that's especially even more true in Japan. Or at least it is in this character's life. So to take a step away from that and be in nature, I think is really fascinating. And it kind of helped me. I read it in the winter when I couldn't be outside as much. Kind of get back into nature, at least through reading anyway. Even though the book is kind of a comfy read, it tackles a lot of difficult subjects still, a lot of difficult things in life, like how you mourn death in a small community, unrequited love, trying to learn this new form of work that you have no idea what you're doing, which is very relatable to those of you who are just now entering the adult world. I remember that time very well. And this sort of fish out of water, slice of life approach is just done so well. One of the things I love about this author is she researches incredibly well. Anything that she writes, she seems to be an expert in. There's even like a works consulted page at the back of the novel. So if you get a chance... So if you're looking for a translated work that's a little bit on the shorter side and just kind of relaxing but really thought-provoking at the same time, The Easy Life and Kamusari is a wonderful book. And I know it has a sequel too. I haven't got around to reading that yet, but that will be in 2024 for sure. Our next category is the best piece of nonfiction that I read this year, and for that, the clear winner is Ghostland by Colin Dickey. The subtitle of this book is An American History of Haunted Places, and Colin Dickey is a wonderful collector and teller of folklore and small-town legends. He's written a couple articles for Atlas Obscura, so if you're familiar with that website and you like the sort of stories that they tell, you'll love this piece. And what I love about it is it feels like you are sitting around a campfire. It is a work of scholarly historical writing, but it's presented in a way that's just so refreshing and intriguing and kind of spooky. And the ghostliness of all of these stories is taken very seriously. And at first that might sound kind of silly, like Ghost Hunters-esque, but really this piece convinced me about how important ghost stories are in our history. There's a great chapter on how seances and mediums were intrinsically linked to the early women's suffrage movement in America, or how the Klan used stage magic and storytelling as a way to try and spread fear and intimidation in the Jim Crow South. So if you're looking to learn more about America, or more about ghost stories, or more about how to tell folklore and legends, this is an amazing book, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Speaking of ghost stories, our next book happens to be one, and this is the category Best Classic Book that I should have read a long time ago, but am just now getting around to, and that is Toni Morrison's Beloved. Believe it or not, I had not read Beloved until this year, and I'm so glad that I finally did. This book has received all sorts of praise, and it is more than deserving of everything great that has been said about it. Morrison's past experience as an editor is on full display. Each individual sentence is like its own work of art, but collectively they're woven together into this like near perfectly presented plot. There's so much to unpack in this story and so much to talk about, but it also just moves at an incredible clip and you want to keep reading. That's not to say that this is a comfortable story, though. Morrison is definitely intentionally discombobulating and shaking readers out of their comfort zone to talk about the horrible way in which slavery corrodes and pulls apart all things that it touches. But there's also a beautiful sense of hope and community throughout this novel, and it really is a book that everyone should read at some point, especially if you're an American. So if you somehow, like me 6 months ago, have not read this book yet, definitely take some time to check it out. Next category is a book that I reread this year. As a teacher, I reread a lot of books as I teach them alongside my students who are reading them maybe for the first time. This is a book that I've read probably 10 times. I first read it as a child and am now reading it on a yearly basis pretty much as a teacher, and that is Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. This book is so influential to so many writers. The more time I spend with this book, the more research I do about this book, the more writers and YouTubers and lovers of just scary, wonderful stories I find who have talked about how influential this book is to them. If you don't know anything about this book, it is an amazing, haunting, terrifying story about a carnival that arrives just before Halloween in this small, isolated town in 1940s Illinois. And this carnival is the wicked thing that's forecasted in the novel's title. When the carnival arrives, two young boys alone, or at least for part of the novel, alone have to confront it. Will, who is nervous about the passage of time, especially with an older father who he hasn't really connected with much recently, and Jim, whose father is not in his life and who wants nothing more than to grow up and get out of this town. I think there's a couple of reasons this book resonated with me so much this year. One is that Bradbury is an incredibly poetic novelist. We think of Bradbury as a short story writer and a science fiction writer and a fantasy writer and even a screenwriter. We don't often think of him as a poet, but this book is just so beautifully and sometimes terrifyingly poetic. And it really is a book that you have to read more than once to get more out of it. And I think around the 10th time, I'm finally getting there. This is a book that I struggle to read out loud when we read sections out loud with my students because the sentences are dense, but it's not something that I get frustrated by. It's a book that I love to read slowly and just kind of soak the language in. Another reason this book, I think, is resonating with me more and more is I'm a father myself. When I first read it, I connected more with the children in the book, and now that I'm a dad, I'm definitely seeing it from another perspective. And just personally, I've seen clips of the film before, but it wasn't until this year that I actually sat down and watched the entire movie, the Disney movie from the 1980s. And while it's not perfect by any stretch, I think Charles and Mr. Dark are acted near perfectly, and I really, really enjoyed the movie. So if you've never seen that movie, or if you have and didn't know that it was based on a book, you should absolutely check out Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. My penultimate category is the best play that I've read this year. Both myself and my wife work in theater, so we spend a lot of time reading plays, and one that I just loved this year and I got the chance to build the set for and direct was The Hobbit, adapted by Patricia Gray. This is an incredible edition of The Hobbit. It's from the 1960s, and it was actually approved by J.R.R. Tolkien, which makes it kind of unique. He personally approved this, and I can see why. It's such an amazingly fun play, but it also has such great big moments on stage, and the play just has such a wide cast of amazing characters. Obviously, there's your Gandalf and your Bilbo and your Thorin, But unlike the films, I think this play really has the other dwarves really shine through. And there's a lot of other roles outside of that. So if you direct plays and you're looking for a good one for a large, flexible cast, I cannot recommend this one enough. So much fun, was such a hit. Although I will say, building the circular door for Bilbo's house, that was nearly the end of me. I learned why circular functioning doors are a work of fantasy. Pulled it off, but it took a lot out of me. But anyway, love this play. We'll look back on it fondly and probably be rereading it in the future. And finally, I have the best new book of 2023, according to me. This is something that did come out this year that I read, and for me, I was so excited to read this book. I've read a lot of this author's stuff in the past, and this one did not disappoint. Might be my favorite thing that she's ever written, and that is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. This novel is about a podcaster who talks about true crime in Hollywood, like classic Hollywood, for a living, who goes back to her old boarding school in New Hampshire and has to come face to face with a past that she wishes she could have buried, but has always kind of haunted her. And it's just so incredibly well presented. If you like true crime and podcasts, then this is right up your alley, but it's never sensationalized. This book is hard to read at times. It really takes a cold, hard look at the violence that happens in America, especially to women, and our fascination with it and even commercialization of it. And it really wrestles with those questions, and it does it in this really cool setting of this boarding school in New Hampshire in the winter. And it's just amazingly written. John Green named it his favorite novel of 2023. So if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. It's a longer book, about 400 pages. But it's absolutely incredible. Rebecca Mackay's I Have Some Questions for You. Check out her other books as well. She's one of the most exciting and incredibly talented writers writing today. So that was my 2023 in reading. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of those books and what your thoughts were on them, or if you have books that you think I should check out in 2024 as we start a brand new year of books to read. And if you'll let me reflect on the channel for a second here, it's been such an exciting year. We hit 10,000 subscribers, which is something I never even dreamt of happening when I first started making videos. So that was amazing. Thank you so much for subscribing and following along. I also got to experience the amazing high of watching a video go viral for my channel for the first time, with my Freud video getting 60,000 views in its first like 6 weeks. And then I got to experience the crushing low of when YouTube stopped recommending it, and it dropped off by 97% the next month. But it was great while it lasted, and it was so exciting to see so many people checking out the channel and talking about that video. So thank you if you watched it. And I also got to work with one of my favorite brands of all time with Field Notes. So thank you so much for everyone who checked out that product through my affiliate link or used the Oxford comma coupon code to purchase some Field Notes. That was a great success, and hopefully will allow me to upgrade and continue to make more videos in the future. So stick around for 2024. Should be some exciting stuff coming your way, and I can't wait to see where it takes all of us. So happy New Year, happy reading, and I'll see you on the other side of the calendar.